Donald's Middle East tour has quickly devolved into an international embarrassment, which tracks because he himself is an international embarrassment. So, between the bizarre soundbites, the dictator photo ops, his nonstop needs for praise, the mobile McDonald's, what is going on here? It has been less of a diplomatic mission and more of a traveling exercise in decompensation. Today, Donald hit Doha in Abu Dhabi. But before we get to the chaos on the ground, Fox aired part two of Donald's interview with Sean Hannity, which took place on Air Force One. You know, the old one that is actually designed to do what it's supposed to do and isn't going to cost American taxpayers another $1 billion. Anyway, Donald opened with what he thought was a winning message on prescription drugs, only to reveal accidentally how corrupt the pharmaceutical companies in America are and how deeply broken our healthcare system really is.
Where we're buying, you're selling drugs in other countries for 5 times more than it costs in the United States. How horrible that is. It's very unfair to people. They have cancer and they don't have much money. They have enough money to get through this, but then they end up going bankrupt. You know, people were getting themselves fixed up or not getting fixed up. Either way, and still they were going bankrupt all over the place because they couldn't afford the drugs. But if they lived in a different country, they would have paid just a fraction. Think of how horrible that is.
Well, so first he lies to everybody by saying drugs cost 5 times more in other countries, and then he ends by saying that things are much cheaper in other countries. I also do think that it's kind of a bit too on the nose for Donald to pretend that he cares what happens to other people, especially since he's in charge of the party that's trying to take away everybody's health care. Anyway, turns out that if people lived in other developed countries, they'd actually be getting free universal health care. The United States is the only wealthy country on the planet without a national health care system. And his executive order didn't fix that. It just tries to tie drug prices to what other countries pay without doing anything to stop big pharmaceutical companies from raising prices overseas in response. According to MSNBC's healthcare analysis, the order does not touch the middlemen, which would be the pharmacy benefit managers, who are the ones who inflate costs. It also avoids the patent abuses that block cheaper generics. All the executive order does is hand Health Secretary Robert Kennedy a vague directive to propose rules while big pharmaceutical stock prices are rising in response. That's always a bad sign. If something is good for big pharma, it is almost certainly going to be bad for us. Then Donald pivoted to one of his favorite lines that if he hadn't won, America would have been finished. Cue the projection.
I really believe if I didn't win this election, this country would be finished. I don't think it would have had a chance of surviving. You would have had the most radical lunatics. You would have had people rioting. It would have been this would have been the experiment of, they call it the great experiment. The great experiment would have ended.
I actually think it's a bit ill-advised of him to refer to himself as a radical lunatic, but, at least he's telling the truth for a change. Yeah, that's what happens when you engage in projection on a regular basis. People know what you're actually talking about. I just want to make this connection. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time. Donald is a nihilist, and he literally can't imagine anything surviving beyond him. So it shouldn't surprise us that he actually thinks it would have been the end of the American experiment. And that's what it's called, Donald, not the great experiment, if he had got reelected, because how could any of us possibly go on? Of course, things are infinitely worse than they would have been if he had just gone away. Next, Donald explained that presidents should get an entire month off before starting their jobs in order to redecorate.
We're here for really 2 months because it's 3.5, but you got to give me a month to get ready. You know, make the Oval Office a little more beautiful and things like that we're doing, right?
Priorities. Priorities. He has always had his priorities straight. By the way, unlike every other sane country on the planet, we get 79 days in between the election and the inauguration of the new president for the very purpose of allowing the incoming administration to get ready. It's called the transition. So, true, you cannot spend the transition redecorating the White House because the new incoming president doesn't live there yet, but that is the best use of your time. I mean, I actually, don't get me wrong, I would love to see Donald hang wallpaper. But given what he just did to the Oval Office, turning it into some knockoff version of Versailles, I'm pretty sure it didn't take that long. And even if it did, I'm pretty sure he's not the one putting the gold leaf on every available surface in the Oval Office. So, according to reporting from Fast Company, none of the objects he put on the mantle in the Oval Office were made in the United States of America, even though he's out there constantly launching a tariff war in the name of Buy American. He literally flew in his quote unquote Mar-a-Lago gold guy, which I'll get to in a second. But before we go further, we here at Mary Trump Media are not corporate media. Billionaires don't give us big checks. Billionaires don't give us anything. We do this because it matters, and we do it because of you. So please take a second to like and share our videos. And if you support what we do, please subscribe to our channel. This morning, Donald met with U.S. defense contractors and Qatari oligarchs at the Ritz in Doha. While surrounded by Gulf billionaires, he still found time to take petty shots at Pete Buttigieg, who used to be the Secretary of Transportation.
Pete Buttigieg was the head, and he goes bicycling to work. He takes a bicycle to work. Can you believe he's running the biggest air system in the world, and he takes a bicycle to work? And they say he's going to run for president. I don't see it.
Is that funny? I mean, I guess it would be funny if Donald were the one on a bicycle. Notice how he didn't say riding it. Is he supposed to? Is Pete Buttigieg supposed to take, I don't know, a stealth bomber to work? I guess is that compulsory for the Department of Transportation? And quite honestly, at this point, given the horrific state of the FAA, I think taking any kind of airplane would be ill-advised. So Buttigieg commute is not the issue. The fact that Donald continues to be fixated on a guy who was Secretary of the Department of Transportation in the Biden administration. It's deeply weird. I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that Pete Buttigieg is gay. Nothing at all. Then Donald started gushing about his new favorite strongman, which is Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Shara.
And the other, of course, is Syria. We took out the sanctions, and I didn't even realize it's been many, many years that they've had sanctions. And as you know, there was a very big change at the top. I met the new leader of the country, and he's got a strong past. I'll be very nice. He got a strong past, but I liked him a lot. You're going to have a strong past to put that one around. You cannot be a weak person. If you're a weak person, we would just be wasting time. So he's a strong guy, and
he has a strong past. What exactly does that mean? Well, let's be clear about this. The man Donald met, Ahmed al-Shara, is still listed as a terrorist by the United States of America under the alias Abu Muhammad al-Golani. He led the group formerly known as the Nusra Front, which the United States recognizes as part of al-Qaeda. The United States only recently lifted the $10 million bounty on his head. And as for those sanctions against Syria, well, they existed for a reason. Syria has been seen as a state sponsor of terrorism since 1979. The new regime has not yet met the conditions sent by U.S. law to lift that designation, Yet, Donald is unilaterally revoking all sanctions without congressional approval, all because he thinks that the new leader of Syria is strong. And then the conversation took a bit of a turn. Donald started to talk about stealth planes, submarines, and drone strikes, just demonstrating, I guess, as always, how little he understands about modern defense.
I'm not a huge believer in stealth because stealth is basically a lot of it's to design and to shape, and so you're going to design an ugly plane for stealth reasons, and then I don't think unless you have a really, really stupid group of people, including the president, I don't think anybody can catch us on submarines. We have our submarine. It can stay underwater for 30 years. Think of it. The only reason it has to come up is for food. It doesn't need water because they have their system of water, which is they can stay forever. The only so intense. You see these trees being knocked down like they're being sawed down by a top of the line timberman, like who? Sean Duffy. Do you know that Sean Duffy, the head of?
I don't know. I'm sort of at a loss. Was that a Paul Bunyan reference at the end? Like, where are we going with this? Submarines underwater for 30 years because they need food. Okay, this is what the President of the United States is saying publicly in front of our allies, leaders of other countries, defense contractors, people who wish us ill, and are being given ample evidence on a daily basis that the person ostensibly leading the United States of America and has all of the power that redounds to the leader of the United States of America is out of his flipping mind. And not only is he for sale, he doesn't know what day it is most of the time. Meanwhile, in a separate Fox interview, Donald tried to justify taking that $400 million luxury jet from Qatar by using their prime minister as a prop.
Unfortunately, I see that this story is taking a different direction and is being more politicized while it's a normal government-to-government deal. We bought this airplane from an American company. It's basically part of a cooperation that we've been doing a lot together between Qatar and the United States. So I don't see a point out of this.
Did you all talk about it today?
No, actually, we didn't bring it up at all.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't. It was very generous of the Prime Minister to parrot the talking points handed to him by Fox and somebody in the White House press team. Well, it's interesting that the Prime Minister tried to call this a normal government-to-government transaction, but it's recently come to light that it's something much, much more. According to Forbes, and as reported by Newsweek, this jet has been sitting unsold since 2020. It was, in other words, a cast-off. Qatar tried to sell it. They failed. They gifted it to President Erdogan of Turkey. And in 2018, that was in 2018. And then finally, they offered it to Donald. So they're basically trying to pass off this secondhand plane that they don't even want anymore as some kind of massive favor to a man they're treating like royalty in front of his face, but behind his back are mocking as the pathetic excuse for a human being that he actually is. Yeah, just throw some old planes and Big Macs at him and you'll get whatever you want. Finally, Donald fielded questions from reporters on his way to Abu Dhabi, and one question basically hit a nerve. He was supposed to attend peace talks in Turkey between Ukraine and Russia, but Putin pulled out. So Donald did too. Now, let's be clear. He didn't say no to the talks. He said he might still go if it was appropriate. But once Putin said no, suddenly Donald's calendar was full.
Mr.
Mr. President, are you disappointed in the level of the delegation that the Russians sent to Turkey?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not disappointed in anything. Who are you from?
BBC News.
I'm not disappointed. What would I be disappointed? We just took in $4 trillion, and he says, are you disappointed about a delegation? I know nothing about a delegation. I haven't even checked. Look, nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying. Thank you. You're going to land right now. Thank you.
Yeah, he wasn't disappointed at all that his favorite dictator wasn't going to show up. And now he's going to pretend that it was Putin who was disappointed because Donald wasn't going to. I mean, seriously, no, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. I mean, these people, he's just so absurd and immature. And yeah, the $4 trillion he's talking about, first of all, most of that's imaginary. And a lot of it is just putting in his own pocket. So good job. Good job. So why would he be disappointed? Really? Because once again, Putin is yanking that leash. Donald isn't making any decisions. He doesn't need Vladimir Putin to be in a room with him in order to make something happen. Well, he does actually, but an actual leader wouldn't. He's waiting for his instructions. Putin bailed, Donald followed because he wouldn't know what to do in such a meeting. So while he was pouting on Air Force One, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and 2 other envoys flying to Istanbul to represent the United States. And it left Zelensky, President Zelensky of Ukraine, who is fighting for his country's future after it was illegally invaded by Russia. Zelensky showed up, standing alone in Ankara, and wondering why the 2 men who might actually be able to bring this nightmare to an end didn't even bother. The 2 men who could actually control the narrative, who could actually change the future of his country, didn't even bother. Why? Because they don't care. They have nothing but contempt for real leaders like Volodymyr Zelensky, have nothing but contempt for people who are on the right side of issues because they're only interested in their own self-interest, enriching themselves. They are not going to waste their time in meetings that they feel have no value for them. How are they going to make money, right? How are they going to accrue power by, I don't know, having a conversation with a man who actually knows what it means to lead his country, who actually cares in democracy, and who's not in it for themselves? Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin know nothing about such things. Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.